the old Nokias, the indestructible 3310s and all that.
Yeah.
And that's how their students answer quizzes and questions using that, because they've got mobile network and they've got digital and they've got radio.
Hello and welcome to the Test Community Network. My name's Tim Millett. I hope you're all safe and well. That was a short clip from my interview today with Nigel Gracie, where we talk about e-learning and assessment across Africa. This is the Test Community Network, as ever, a reminder. So if you want to go to testcommunity.network, there you'll find an amazing amount of resources around events, podcasts, and a massive marketplace full of products and services and useful information, data, surveys, etc. Everything you can find that you need across the assessment space. Also, a reminder that I do a podcast as well with Amanda Danis. It's called the It Depends podcast. It's available on all great, amazing podcast channels. And here's a quick clip for you from one of our recent episodes about exam maintenance.
That it's a good question, and I think it's one that people don't ask enough. Like, what happens once we launch the test? Everybody talks a lot about test development. We work a lot with our clients on test development, JTA, item rating, setting the cut score. And then they just kind of like release their test and then they let it sit out there. And so it's not a one and done.
So if you want to hear more about that, go to the Test Community Network. You'll find the podcast player on there. You'll find the It Depends one. You also, if you go via the Test Community Network website, you'll find the bonus episodes that Amanda and I record, or bonus questions that we record. Now, next week, we've got a really, really, really amazing session. We're discussing spatial computing with Neil Redding. This is an interview that I've done already, and I've got a clip for you just to play, to give you a sample as to what Neil will be talking about.
I'm focused not on prediction or what's coming at some point, but what's emerging as possible today that can be put into immediate practical use for brands and businesses and teams. Those are the clients that I work with. And, I'm really focused on getting things built and understanding not just what might be coming, but provably what can be done today.
So I recommend that you tune in next week on the 11th of July, where I'll be interviewing Neil about spatial computing and its impact, really, just to waken up the assessment space as to the amazing potential it's going to have for testing and augmented reality and all those kind of spatial aspects of testing, the physical world, really. That's what's going to be amazing. Now, we've got some interesting stuff here as well for you. So we've got a leadership in the AI transformation of assessments. This is a webinar that I did last month with three very special guests. There was Steve Connolly, Adesh Suhindra from ExcelSoft, and Graham Hudson. And we talked about how you would start to deploy AI within your assessment program in a safe and easy manner. Now, what we've done is we've compiled all the information that was captured as part of that webinar. We've created a whole range of resources available for you. You can go to the Test Community Network website. You'll see a link there, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. And there's also a 5-day course you can do. It's an email course, so you get a drip-fed email once a day. You can choose when you want to start it as well. So you can delay it for a few days. So that's going to be a really worthwhile thing to look at. We've also got an online workshop coming up. So this is a presentation that I gave at the EAA conference last month on we're looking at the wider industry's use of AI. So looking beyond the assessment industry, how they're using AI in the creative space, life and love, with cloning people, and how that's going to affect then the assessment space. So the idea was to really wake up people as to what's going on elsewhere in the world. So if you want to get yourself booked onto that, there's a special discount code there as well. So you get 15% discount if you join on that. There's 4 dates in August. There's only 9 spaces per session. I want to make it a really kind of intimate session so people get lots of information and they can really ask me many questions they want about my kind of use and understanding of generative AI and how it's affecting the space. As ever, with all these updates, go to testcommunity.network, subscribe, and you'll receive all that information. Just some other headline updates before we start the interview. So we've got the 7th of July is the deadline for the FAB Award. That's a Federation of Awarding Bodies. Make sure if you want to be in that, then get yourself submitted. We've got Maths Conference coming up. That's a virtual one that's going to take place on the 4th and 5th, if you want to check that out. ePortfolios on the 4th. as well, if you want to check out about portfolios and have a look at that. English language testing conference, that's going to be on the 5th to the 7th. That's virtual. AI educator, this is Dan Fitzpatrick. He's been looking at Claude. Last week, he looked at Notebook LM, the product from Google. This time, he's looking at Claude Projects, which is a new feature they brought out. ITS, the team at ITS, Testing Systems, have started a webinar series, will be soon on the 10th, which is going to take you through a series of different steps, giving you ideas about how AI can be used in the assessment space. And Amanda Rutter is going to start that one off on the 10th of July. Then you've got the Transform Assessment. They're doing a summary of the assessment awards, probably a bit more in depth than what Matt and I skimmed through last week, so it's worth checking that out. SPAS guys have got a webinar coming up, law examination, so if you're interested in law examinations, then please do check that out as well. I'm going to play you now the clip interview with Nigel, where we talk about Africa and assessment and talent-based assessments. So here's my conversation with Nigel.
Nigel, thank you for joining me. I hope you're well.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, very good.
Excellent, excellent. So just tell us a bit more about yourself and the industry that you work in.
Yeah, so I've worked for 20 years in learning and development and HR products and solutions of one sort or other. So you name it, I've either sold it myself or run the sales function that sells it. A lot of that has been, as you know, in psychometric assessment, and that's where I'm operating now. And so my job is I've got about 200 channel partners, because our business model is primarily an indirect sales model. So I've got about 200 channel partners across Europe and Africa that I look after, and I'm always sourcing for new partners as well.
Okay, and it's talent-based assessment. So just if anyone who doesn't really know and understand that space, what does talent-based assessment mean?
So it's what people think of in terms of personality and behavioral based assessment, as opposed to the more educational qualifications and skill based. So our specific one is a behavioral based assessment, and our research shows the key driver of performance is actually behavior. The skill set obviously is very important, but that's table stakes and gets you in the game. Having all the skills and the knowledge, it's the behavior that actually drives performance.
Okay, and what's been the kind of the big things that have been kind of happening within the talent-based assessment world? What have you seen recently that's been some big significant developments for you?
So, I mean, I think like for everyone, AI is bandied around left, right, and center, and you know, I think for a lot of industry, it's still unclear what the impact is going to be on our industry, but I think there's certainly going to be an impact. One of the things that I'm personally mindful of is, probably unlike a lot of the assessment providers more in the skills space, we don't have proctoring. And now I'm not techie enough to know whether AI is going to be able to, for example, generate a particular desired profile, but if it does, do we need to look in? Is that something that I'm thinking? Okay, is that something we need to look into? Do we need to look into do proctoring to make sure that the person who's completing the assessment is actually the person who's supposed to be completing it? And as I say, not so concerned about another human being, because human beings typically aren't knowledgeable enough to fake it, even if they are a psychologist. But the AI, on the other hand, could they? Yeah, and I think the jury's still out, but I think it's certainly something that I'm keeping half an eye on.
Definitely, and I think every industry is either running scared with AI at the moment, or is definitely mindful of how it's going to affect and impact their industry. So, in terms of the kind of talent-based industry, is there a particular hotspots that you work in? Have you seen particular growth areas? Is there kind of future potential?
I think so. Again, I think with the growth of AI and some of the other stuff going on, the ability to obviously exhibit the behaviors, engage with other human beings, is become even more important. It's always been important. Like in my world of sales, the cold outreach, the business development activities that's creating, inbound and outbound lead generation I think it's going to be massively impacted because the holy grail in sales is being able to do outbound lead generation at scale that's personalized. And at the moment, you can't do it, because by definition, if it's doing it at scale, it can't be personalized. So is AI going to be able to do that? And that's why I think it's going to have certainly a big impact on in sales world.
Yeah. Okay. And you've just been to a conference in Africa. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So it was really, really interesting. As you know, part of my remit is to look after Africa, and so we see that as real growth areas for our business. And I saw this one, and it was specifically to do with e-learning, and I thought, yep, there we go. That's I'm going to spend some budget. And I did look at possibly considering exhibiting, but decided not to. Decided just to go there as an attendee. I might exhibit next year. They're in Dar es Salaam, and it was really, there was a lot of similarities. So a lot of, when it comes to people development, a lot of the challenges are exactly the same. Now, of course, they have some other challenges, and there were some quite inspiring stories. There was one organization that does education, and at scale, but because most of the people they're educating, the only means of communication is radio. So they've sourced, they do their lessons by radio, and they've literally gone out, and I assume they've got them either from the manufacturer or by donations. The old Nokias, the indestructible 3310s and all that.
Yeah.
And that's how their students answer quizzes and questions using that, because they've got mobile network, and they've got and they've got radio. And there was another guy who I'd been talking to for a couple of months, Francis. He's known as the traveling teacher, if you want to look him up on LinkedIn. He and I have been speaking for a couple of months. He's based in Uganda, about bringing our career navigation solution to his part of the world through his network. So yeah, and there's, as I say, more similarities than there are differences.
Yeah. So whereabouts was the conference you went to? Where exactly was it?
So it's in Kigali, in Rwanda, which obviously to the UK audience, the obvious jokes all came straight out, which first few times was funny, but then got a bit boring. But yeah, Rwanda is really positioning itself as, if you want to expand into Africa, or specifically East Africa, then you need to land and expand from there.
Okay, and how easy do you think that would be for an organization that's looking at that region then? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, like everything, obviously it depends on what it is you're offering, and what the business model that you use is. Because probably on the face of it, obviously, psychometric assessment is, Rwanda is probably not the first place you think of as a prime market for psychometrics. But I think I don't think that's the case. I think there's lots of those opportunities, and those countries have got the talent within them, and they're just ready to expand and develop themselves in the world stage. And yeah.
And I suppose it could, when you say it's not necessarily the first obvious place, but Africa's massive, isn't it? And if you've got a product or service which aligns to their needs and wants, and like I said about the infrastructure, and the approach there, then the potential's enormous. I think just chatting before we went on air, you were saying about the job market potential. Do you want to just repeat that stat for me, because that was pretty impressive?
We'll come back to that in a second. So it's a really quite impressive stat. I just want to quickly show you this. So the Community.Network, this is on the homepage here. You've got the leadership in AI transformation. So make sure you click on that to get through to that free course. And that will take you through to the free course, the resource pack, plus there's presentations, the webinar you can watch as well. And there's some key starting points for you to consider as well as part of your process. In addition, Excelsoft have been working with me on this one to supply these resources. They've got a whole load of AI micro apps that you can try as part of your solutions. These are things that you can use in addition to your product and services. So you can start to explore and expand your AI usage without putting your program at risk. And then finally, if you want to sign up to the online Summer AI workshops, then go to the web address there. I'll put the back up later on. I'll put it during this presentation. So you can go to Community.Network/AI workshop, and there you'll be able to sign up for my workshops during the August period. Here's back to my conversation with Nigel as we talk about the potential within Africa.
I think just chatting before we went on air, you were saying about the job market potential. Do you want to just repeat that stat for me, because that was pretty impressive?
Yeah. So again, I haven't got the exact number, but it was in the region of something like by 2050, half of the world's working population will be in Africa.
Yeah.
And so if you're not looking at Africa in terms of for staff or for to export to there, or partnerships like we do, or just keeping an eye on them for your competition, you're gonna be behind the curveball. Mixing my analogies there. You're going to be behind the curve.
But did you see much in the way of competition when you were there? With in terms of the exhibitors that were present and stuff, was it mostly African-based organisations? Was it international? Was there kind of French contingent there? What was the kind of makeup there?
There was, as you would imagine, there was quite a lot of African exhibitors, but there was also French and German. It was sad that I think there wasn't much from the UK. Sadly, I'm not going to read anything into that straight away. But yeah, France and Germany were noticeable. I'm probably not surprised, obviously, with the French-speaking nations, not too far off of them. But yeah, the number of German companies there was a surprise.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think a lot of European countries like Germany, France, UK, Netherlands, they've all had kind of colonial past connections with various different areas and regions of Africa, haven't they? So, but it's interesting that you say that there wasn't much in the way of UK, and I must admit, in my kind of business history, there's only been one or two people I've spoken to who've kind of used Africa as an example of a potential growth area. It's not often. I suppose sometimes people look at it, particularly with high stakes summative based digital assessment. They look at it and go, well, the infrastructure is not there to support it. But do you think that's changing?
I think it's certainly changing. Not everywhere, I'm certainly not suggesting you shouldn't be selective and do your research and all that, all that common sense stuff before you start putting your hand in your pocket, however it is you plan to expand. I think for our business, because we are primarily a channel business, so it kind of lends itself to that. Because I'm not talking about going there and spending millions on infrastructure or building stuff or anything like that. I'm going there to meet the right people, to build partnerships and relationships and that kind of stuff. So I do think our business model lends itself. But also, knowing my industry, as you know, I've worked in my industry for 20 years now. Whilst UK, France, Germany, Ireland, Spain, all those Western Europe countries, the challenge certainly in my industry is it's a bit of a saturated market. Every assessment provider on the planet, particularly, the reality is a lot of assessments are developed in English. So if you're going to go and start selling them, the first place you're going to go is the English-speaking nations, because obviously you'd have to translate the products into another language. So that's one of my challenges, is always the fact that all my other vendor competitors operate in those countries, which is why my personal focus is quite a lot on Eastern Europe and Africa.
Excellent. Well, so it sounds pretty interesting. I think you took the right approach there to kind of go and visit before necessarily going straight in for the exhibition kind of route, because it's always good to test these things out first, because you just find that you spend a lot of money on something and it comes to nothing.
Yeah. Sadly, I do have a bag of cash to spend on these things, but unfortunately, it's not an unlimited bag of cash.
No.
So yeah, being selective, choosing the right ones. If nothing else, it reinforced, and maybe it's coincidence, maybe it was serendipity. But I had a conversation with a guy, and we had a half-hour conversation scheduled for this morning, and we spoke for 2 hours. Around this, and it reinforced part, and this was by coincidence, that even though he wasn't Rwanda, this guy was a bit further west in Africa. But I think even though it's a smaller revenue stream potentially for us, my career navigation is absolutely where I'm going, and go in hard. Because originally I was thinking, okay, do I want to go down focusing on the corporates and those big businesses that are investing in those countries? But no, career navigation is definitely where I'm going to go and focus a lot of my attention when it comes to that part of the world.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good to hear. Well, thank you very much for sharing your kind of insights. So what we try to do with this is to kind of bridge different areas of the assessment world, and talent is one that it's huge, it's massive, but it tends to be forgotten sometimes a little bit when you're looking at the core. It always get overshadowed by secondary and primary and educational assessment or higher education or something like that. Yeah. So it's great to hear from a member of the kind of talent world, and particularly to hear your kind of views and thoughts based on your experiences in Africa. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. I appreciate that, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, pleasure to talk, Tim.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Nigel. So I'm going to leave you now with the just a reminder about the AI transformational course that we have that you can sign up for. That's a 5-day drip course in there, and I'd love to hear more about Africa. So some really quite interesting insights there from Nigel, and in particular about the fact that there wasn't much UK representation there as well. I'm sure some of my colleagues will be perking up and listening to that one. So thank you very much. You take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.